A man who needs no introduction is the regular Canberra correspondent for Flow News 24, John McDonnell. Wayne Phillips will regularly cover his pieces on the morning show. It was me, Ricky Lambert, covering for Wayne this week as he gets cherry ripe for the Friday night sports show. The article you can read on flownews24.com.au is entitled Australian Motor Transport Reform is Overdue. Flow News 24 Canberra correspondent John McDonnell argues that Australia could reduce its carbon dioxide emissions for motor transport immediately simply by changing the petrol that we use. He says Australian petrol is among the dirtiest in the world. John quotes Steve Moore from the Motor Trade Association of Western Australia saying our oil refineries are saying it would cost about $1 billion to upgrade their facilities, but these days you really wouldn't want to run a car on 91 RON. At a pinch, use 95 or ideally 98, but it's still dirty by world standards. That's why we aren't getting all the cars they have in Europe. The Australian Institute of Health and Welfare found air pollution accounted for 2,549 premature deaths in 2011, more than the national road toll from accidents. But here's the kicker. John says that if European-style petrol was introduced into Australia, the price of fuel would rise by about 25%. But yes, cars would be more efficient and fuel consumption would fall. He says that the Australian government has been consulting on mandatory standards for fuel emissions since 2015, even though those standards have been in place for at least a decade in places like Japan, the USA and even China. Now, you can read the rest of that article at flownews24.com.au, but it is really confusing to look at what government at a state and federal level really wants us to do with our driving habits. You might note that in Victoria they're introducing a charge for people with electric or hybrid electric petrol vehicles, which is going to cost somewhere in the region of $150 to $200 a year, even if you've got an existing motor vehicle that is hybrid or electric. And then you look at the 2015 plans by the Gillard government, which was colloquially referred to as the Cash for Clunkers scheme, where the Gillard government was going to give you $2,000 if you upgraded your car. There is really, quite frankly, a lot of wreckage in this policy space. I'm certain that's why the South Australian government has blinked and passed on the same scheme the Victorian government is introducing on electric and hybrid vehicles, because there's a state election coming just inside of a year. So on the one hand, you've got governments that are telling us that they want to tax us for using electric vehicles or hybrid vehicles, but then they also want to charge you for using vehicles that are using 91 or what you might call regular petrol. They want to push you up to premium or even ultimate, the 98 octane petrol. Now, I understand the policy reasons for wanting to tax electric vehicles because theoretically they're not contributing enough towards the cost of maintaining the roads they drive on, because there's this concept called hypothecation, where theoretically the fuel tax that you're paying when you consume petrol is then used to pay for the repair and upgrade of roads. And if you're an electric vehicle, you're not using as much fuel, or a hybrid vehicle, not quite using as much fuel either, you need to contribute to the cost of maintaining the roads. But what I think this debate misses is the usual thing that gets missed is the poor old country person who is driving long distances. I've got great doubts that your emissions from your vehicle between Nil and Cavniva or between Streaky Bay and Ceduna are going to contribute to the air quality of people who are living within proximity to the cars travelling along that road. Whereas, of course, if you're in metropolitan Melbourne or Sydney, then the amount of emissions those vehicles are producing are certainly going to affect local people's public health. It does seem to me that whilst there might be a push across the government level to eventually get us onto more premium petrol, the premium that they're missing is the premium that country people pay time and time again, because their petrol is more expensive than what the city people are paying for.